Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to show you 6 creative pages for your junk journals. The first one is a sewing pattern tissue wrapped page. This is a great way to use up your sewing pattern tissue that you have lying around. I like to wrap it around lightweight cardstock, the kind that folds pretty easily to make a page. It's not the kind that you would normally use for tags and things that are needing more substantial weight. First thing that I do is I cut them down to the size of the page that I need before it's folded for the journal that I'm creating. I'm doing that here. These also create a very tactile, noisy type of page, if you will, because even though you are adhering them to the page, they do maintain some of their crinkle, if you like that sort of thing. You want to try to find pieces of sewing tissue that are large enough that they can fold over your cardstock with enough room to spare. So I'm getting some pieces here that are like the front of a pant leg or a skirt, things like that. A few of them that I pulled out ended up being too narrow, but you also want to try to find some that have, words on them enough to make you know that it is a sewing pattern tissue piece. I keep all of mine, honestly, being raw here, in a trash bag because I just have so many of them, and they're going to be wrinkled anyway, so might as well. Now I know that you can iron them to get the wrinkles out, but for this I kind of want to maintain some of the wrinkles because that ups the crinkle factor, if you will. So I'm just gluing this down. Now, disclaimer here, there is probably a better way to do this than the way I'm doing. I ended up you'll see in a moment, I ended up sort of fiddling with the little fold over pieces. They wanted to keep creeping up on me. You kind of want to think about wrapping a present. And so the corners is where you are going to want to trim, maybe cut a little square out of each corner so that you can wrap the leftover flaps over and then glue those down. I use a glue stick for this because I'm going to sew at the end to hold everything down. And a glue stick will not make the paper bumpy. Like if you were to use white glue, it would sort of make the paper, it would have too much liquid for this thin tissue paper. So I'm going to use a glue stick, and as you can see here, I'm just cutting a little square out to create a tab that's missing that will just let me fold the pages over a little bit better. Right here I should not adhere to both sides, as you can see, because I'm having to lift it up again. But every time I do this, I kind of forget what I did the first time that I did this or the last time that I did this. So I kind of just wing it. But thankfully, this is a junk journal and it's not meant to be perfect. And anything that looks a little wonky on the corners, you can easily sew down with the sewing machine. I use my sewing machine zigzag stitch for this, and I go all around the edge of the page. That just makes sure that nothing's going to pop up on me, and it just has a nice finished look to it. There it is, finished and sewed. I'm just going back and making sure the little pieces that are wanting to lift up are stuck back down. I'm folding them to get them ready to go in the junk journal. These are the Faith floral journals that I'm working on. They're coming along. Be sure to be watching for the flip through. The next is a fabric pocket page. You can create an entire page of fabric, but in this case, I wanted to create some more secret journaling hiding spots. So I am cutting down a piece of coloring book page to fit into the journal, and the back of this page is completely white. So the pages that have absolutely no visible interest on them are the perfect pages to use for a fabric page. You can cover the entire page in fabric, and that gives you a good base layer for adding photographs or maybe a fabric pocket. But in this case, like I said, I'm just going to create a pocket out of the fabric. So here's the fabric that I've chosen. I recently got this from a live sale. It's really pretty. It's like an orange sakura or maybe rose, I'm not sure. And I'm just making sure that it's about the same size of the page. And I'm gonna tear it. I just prefer tearing. I like the way it looks. Luckily, my fold lines were not gonna be interfering with my project, but there might be a need for you to iron yours if you have some fold or creases in yours. You mainly want the edge next to the outside of the page edge to line up exactly. It's okay if the inner edge, close to where you sew the book together, is not 100% covering the cardstock, because most of the time that part will not be seen. Now I'm going to use just a little bit of glue stick to hold this down while I sew it. Don't forget to unfold that page before you sew it, or you'll sew your entire page together to the back side. But you're going to go around 3 edges for a pocket page, and if you want to do a fabric page, of course you go around all 4. There you go. You have a pocket page, and as you can see, there's plenty of room to put stuff inside. Number 3, Franken paper page. Now you guys know that I love to make Franken paper tags. This is kind of the same concept, but I'm able to use some of my larger offcuts, wider offcuts that typically I would reserve back for things like tags and pockets. But I am just going to get some that look good together. The colors are harmonizing, and it lets me create a Franken paper page. So I'm going to put all of them together and then sew them together, and it just creates a really fun page. I'm using my mat as sort of a gauge to let me know where to stop, because I know how big my journal page needs to be, and it helps me line these up to make sure that they're completely at a right angle as well. I'm using a glue stick, of course, and I'm barely overlapping these, maybe 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, something like that. And as soon as I get them adhered, I'm going to take them over to the sewing machine, and again I'm going to use my zigzag stitch. I typically do the height at about 4 and the spacing at about 1.6. That's my favorite way to sew Franken tags and paper together. This is more of these 3 sheets are more of a thinner paper. The one that I did previously is more of a cardstock. So depending on what type of page you want, you can have more of a thinner page or a more substantial page, which would allow you to add a pocket or something to the back. I'm just trimming down this final piece so that it will not be taller than my journal. All right, back from the sewing machine. As you can see, these are completely sewn together. They are basically one piece now, and so you can trim them down to the size of the sheet that you need for your journals now. Coffee break. It's best to cut these. I'm drawing a line and cutting with scissors. You can use a knife as well, because the paper cutters, unless you have a guillotine type, don't really cut very well over the sewn stitching. This is a great scrap buster, by the way. This one, I believe I put in my pink journal. The Faith and Floral journals are loosely color themed. They're a little more eclectic. I'm not going to be super strict about the colors that go in them, but I do try to, if it's got a lot of pink in it, I want it to look pink. I'm trimming the edges here because I did not glue the pages together exactly at a right angle. No big deal. You can trim it later. There's the pink one. 4, large book page pocket page. This is a great way to use some of your larger books that you love and you just feel really bad about cutting the edge of the page off to fit into your book. This is one of my favorite illustrators, and he has very, very large pages. You would have to make a very large junk journal to be able to use the page in its entirety. So I'm looking for one that I like the back and the front of, that also fits the floral theme of the journal. And I decided to use this daffodil page. I trimmed this by hand with scissors because some of this old vintage pulpy paper, if you try to put it in the trimmer, it will rip. I'm measuring right now to see the best way to fold it. Sometimes you only have to fold the bottom up like this, but in my case, these journals are a little more narrow, so I have to do a double fold, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I have to go in another inch or so, and it's fine. It just wraps around some more of the color of the daffodil page, and I'm going to sew a straight line across the bottom here. As you'll see, that holds everything down nicely, and once it's sewn into the book, you have that center adhered down as well, and you've got a great little pocket plus a little side tuck. Number 5, a swatch painted book page. If you love to put book pages in your journal, but you're overrun with all of the black and white text only pages, I have a couple of ideas here to wrap up this video for you. This is very, very basic. I'm sure you've seen this before, but it just allows you to use a different part of your creative mind. I'm using some watercolors and a very wide brush, and I'm just doing sort of a paint swatch motif here. And it just gives some visual interest to an otherwise somewhat boring looking page. I'm using a small brush on this one, and I decided to paint some shapes this time. I love that goldenrod yellow, my favorite. You want to try to use paints that are not the darkest of the dark, because you really do want the words to still shine through. So this is a Bible story book, and I did not want to totally obscure the words. Number 6 and last, printed image book page. My printer will accommodate anything 8.5 by 11 or less. These pages are about a 1/2 inch less wide than that. So I just put them in my printer and fit the little guide rails around the page. I decided I'm about to cut it, but then I remembered I need to print it first. So I printed it with this beautiful image that was free on the internet. I will link below several great websites where you can get images like this. And then I'm trimming the page down, and all you do is just simply fold it at that point and put it in your journal. And you don't have to do a single image in the middle. You could do an all over pattern. The possibilities are endless. So experiment and see what you like best for yours.